I don't know how to begin. 15 years ago, our world crumbled when our daughter, Emily, went missing. The search parties, the police, and the media all scoured our small town, looking for any trace of her. They found nothing. No body, no clothes, no clues. Just the cold, dark night that swallowed her whole. But we knew. My wife, Rachel, and I, we knew what really happened. We had buried our darkest secret that night. We told ourselves it wasn't our fault, that it was an accident, but deep down we knew the truth. Emily was never supposed to leave that night. She was never supposed to talk back like she did. The argument had escalated faster than I could control. It was a blur of shouting, a slap too hard, and her body crumpling to the floor. Rachel screamed as we both stared in horror. No one would ever believe it was an accident. In the dead of night, we buried her in the woods behind the house, far from prying eyes. We lived with the guilt for years, keeping up the charade of devastated parents, praying no one would ever discover the truth. The weight of what we did crushed us slowly, day by day. We never spoke of it, until the phone call. It happened last week, late at night. The house was eerily quiet, and the sound of the phone ringing pierced through the silence like a knife. I grabbed it, half expecting it to be some random wrong number. But then I heard her voice. "Mom? Dad?" I froze. My blood turned to ice. The voice on the other end was unmistakable. It was Emily, but she sounded older. "I'm coming home," she said softly. "I've missed you both." I dropped the phone. Rachel, who had been watching me, grabbed it in confusion. She pressed the receiver to her ear, and I watched as her face drained of all color. She started trembling, her eyes wide with terror. I could hear the voice on the other end of the line, calm and familiar, like nothing had ever happened. "Mom, don't be scared. I forgive you." Rachel dropped the phone, screaming, and fell into a heap on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. I didn't know what to do. I stood there, unable to move, the air around us growing heavier, darker, suffocating. For days after that call, the house felt wrong. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind outside sounded like her footsteps. The guilt that we had buried with Emily had come alive, and it was eating us alive. Then, yesterday, the letters started arriving. One in the morning, one in the afternoon, each addressed in Emily's handwriting. The first one said, asterisk, "I'm home. Asterisk the second, asterisk, come to the woods. I want to see you. Asterisk. We didn't go. We couldn't. But that night, we heard the knocking. It started around midnight, slow, deliberate knocks on the front door. 3 knocks, followed by silence. 3 more knocks. We didn't answer, too terrified to move. But today, it's different. The knocking stopped this morning, but there's something worse. As I sit here writing this, I can feel her. Emily. She's in the house. I hear her voice in the hallway, soft, calling for us. I don't know if it's my guilt or something else entirely, but I can't shake the feeling that whatever came back isn't really our daughter. The door to the basement just creaked open. Rachel is standing by it, her eyes wide with fear. She doesn't want to go down there, but we both know what's waiting. I can hear her now, closer. "Mom, Dad, I'm home. God help us." Rachel's hand trembles as she grips the basement door handle. We both stand frozen, hearts pounding in our chests, unable to move. The air is thick with dread, like a dark cloud settling over our house. The voice is closer now, drifting up from the basement, echoing off the walls. "Mom, Dad," is her voice, but something about it feels wrong, too calm, too steady. My hands shake, sweat dripping down my neck. The sound of her voice should bring comfort, but all it brings is terror. Rachel finally speaks, her voice barely above a whisper. "We have to go down there, Ben. We can't ignore it anymore." I don't answer. My throat is dry, and I feel like I'm suffocating. Rachel pulls open the door slowly, the old hinges creaking in protest. A cold draft sweeps up from the basement, carrying with it a faint, sickly sweet smell. Something familiar, the smell of decay. We step onto the first stair together, our legs heavy as if something is holding us back. The darkness of the basement feels alive, breathing, waiting. The dim light from the kitchen barely penetrates the gloom below. Rachel grips my arm as we descend, each step creaking under the weight of our guilt and fear. "Do you hear it?" she whispers. Her eyes are wide, darting nervously around. I hear it too. It's not just her voice now. There's movement down there. Shuffling, something dragging across the floor. Faint, rhythmic scraping. My mind reels, trying to convince myself it's a rat, or maybe some old pipe shifting. But I know better. We both do. We reach the bottom of the stairs, and the smell is stronger here, almost unbearable. The basement is colder than it should be, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones. There's a single bulb hanging from the ceiling, flickering like it's struggling to stay alive. And then, in the far corner of the room, we see her, Emily. She's standing there, in the same pink dress she wore the night she disappeared, the same dress we buried her in. Her skin is pale, too pale, almost translucent. Her hair hangs limp and dark around her face. And her eyes, God, her eyes, they're hollow. She steps toward us, her feet dragging on the cold concrete floor. The sound of her footsteps makes my skin crawl. My legs feel like they're glued to the ground, unable to move. Rachel clutches my arm tighter, her breathing shallow and ragged. Tears stream down her face, her body trembling beside me. "Emily," Rachel whispers, her voice cracking. "It can't be you." But it is. Or at least it was. The thing that looks like Emily stops a few feet in front of us, her head tilting slightly to one side. Her lips curve into a small, unnatural smile, but it doesn't reach her eyes. Those empty, hollow eyes. "I came back for you," she says softly. "I waited for you, but you never came." Rachel collapses to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. "We didn't mean to," she chokes out. "It was an accident." "Oh God, Emily, we didn't mean to hurt you." But Emily, or whatever this thing is, just stares at us, unmoving. The basement seems to close in on us, the shadows creeping closer, suffocating us with the weight of our sins. "I know what you did," Emily whispers, her voice laced with something darker now, something malicious. "I was awake. I saw everything." I stumble back, the horror of her words sinking in. I remember that night all too well. The way her body felt so limp, so lifeless, when we carried her into the woods. The way we dug the shallow grave in the cold dirt, praying that no one would ever find her. We convinced ourselves she was dead, that there was no way she could have survived. But now, standing in front of us, is the truth we can no longer bury. She wasn't dead when we buried her. She had been alive, and she knows. Rachel sobs harder, rocking back and forth on the cold floor. "Please, Emily, forgive us. We were scared, we didn't know." The smile on Emily's face vanishes, replaced by something darker, more sinister. "Forgiveness?" she says, her voice a low hiss. "I waited for you to come back. You left me in the ground, all alone in the dark." Her words cut through me like a blade. My mind reels, unable to process what's happening. This can't be real. Can't be. But it is. Emily takes another step forward, and suddenly the room seems to tilt, reality warping around us. The air grows colder still, frost creeping along the walls. My breath comes in ragged gasps, and I feel something icy crawl up my spine. "I'm taking you with me," Emily says softly. "Both of you. We can be together again." In the dark, I reach out to pull Rachel back, but she doesn't move. She's staring at Emily, her eyes wide and glazed, as if she's already given up. I try to scream, but no sound escapes my throat. The shadows in the room swirl around us, closing in, wrapping themselves around our bodies like tendrils of darkness. The last thing I hear before everything goes black is Emily's voice, whispering in my ear, "I'll never be alone again." When the police found us the next morning, they said Rachel was curled up in the basement, whispering to herself. I was lying next to her, unconscious, covered in frostbite, my body ice cold. They didn't find anyone else down there, but I know she's still here. I hear her at night calling to us. I hear the knocking, And I know one thing for certain. Emily never left. She's waiting for us to join her.